Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss another question in PMQs. I did a video earlier where PMQs is a bit of a segue into the issue of freedom of speech in America and Britain, and of course Nigel Farage's treachery. But Ed Davey and Keir Starmer had an interesting exchange which raises a few interesting points about the way the Lib Dems can proceed in their not unique position, but they're in a position where they're a prominent party, the third largest party in Parliament, but nobody believes they're going to form the government. In fact, they're the only party that doesn't think it's going to form the government at the next election. But at the same time, did Starmer make a very good point about the way that Ed Davey could still use his influence should he choose to? And is he making the right decision in not meeting with Donald Trump when he attends his state visit? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So let's first of all just begin by having a little look at the exchange between Ed Davey and Keir Starmer, because it was very interesting.
Mr. Speaker, we have all seen the horrifying images from Gaza. The baby is so thin from starvation you can see their skeletons. The bodies of children killed while queuing for water. The emaciated hostages still held captive by Hamas. The Prime Minister has rightly said he wants to stop all that. So when the one man in the world who has the power to stop that comes here to our country on a state visit, will the Prime Minister look President Trump in the eye and urge him?
I'll just pause it there for one moment. I will just explain the reason why some Labour MPs are getting a bit, as Trump would say, yippy there. It's not out of disrespect. It is out of the fact that Starmer is going to make a point in a moment that Ed Davey could speak to Donald Trump himself about this very thing and form a larger group of people urging him
to use the influence on Netanyahu and Qatar to make it stop.
Prime Minister.
Can I join him on his comments about Annette Brooke? And also in his description about the horrifying situation in Gaza, and it is horrifying. We're looking at a man-made famine on top of everything else, and that is why we're expending so much of our time with partners seeking to bring about a ceasefire, to get humanitarian aid in at pace, to get the hostages out, and of course to put forward a peace plan that can actually take us to a two-stage solution. And of course I'll talk to all international leaders about that. I would gently say to him that if he hadn't refused the invite to the state banquet, he could be there 2 weeks on Tuesday and speak to President Trump himself. And I'm surprised it's not an act of leadership to pass up that opportunity.
So a couple of points there. Should Ed Davey go along? Now, there are some people who don't want Donald Trump to visit. They don't want him to visit the UK. I've said before, I actually do. And the reason for that is, yes, if we didn't invite him to the state visit, okay, it's not really much of a protest because it's a non-event. Do you know what I mean? If we don't invite him. But you could say that we shouldn't be inviting him. And I understand that. But he is the President of the United States of America. He is in a very, very powerful position for a lot of geopolitical issues. Ed Davey himself has said that Donald Trump is the one man in the world who can put pressure on people, it specifically mentioned Netanyahu and Qatar, who could put pressure on those people to make this situation in Gaza stop. He's the one person outside of Israel, the one person who can do that. So Ed Davey has accepted that. He understands that. So why wouldn't he want to talk to him? And there's a sense in which the Liberal Democrats are actually in a sort of strong position here, because Keir Starmer has broached this subject as well as issues with Ukraine, because Trump is very much out of kilter with common sense when it comes to both Israel, Gaza and Russia, Ukraine. We've managed to get more out of Trump on Ukraine, probably because there are more levers there. There are more things we can entice him with. European nations boosting NATO funding, mineral deal with Ukraine. So there are things we can entice Trump with in order to sort of edge him sort of onto Ukraine's side. We don't really have anything that I am aware of that we can do for Gaza, right? Gaza for him is like, oh, I can build a Riviera right there and some casinos that might not go bust in a part of the world that doesn't really like gambling. But anyway, so Ed Davey recognises that Donald Trump can do something about it. He must recognise that in actual fact talking to Trump has yielded results. It's certainly yielded results on Ukraine. It's sort of, during his last visit, which wasn't a state visit where Starmer met with Trump, it did even yield a response from Trump where he described Israel as unnecessarily keeping aid out of Gaza. It didn't lead to suddenly a load of aid getting into Gaza, but it at least led to Trump acknowledging that the Israeli government were out of order. So is it really right to say we shouldn't be talking? Is Ed Davey now trying to say that we shouldn't have Trump in the country, but given that you're going to have Trump in the country, would you like to talk to him? It's like, is it a useful thing to talk to Trump or not? This is what I get, and this is why I think Starmer makes a good point. And I think that is why those Labour MPs were sort of, I'd have probably kept quiet myself because it looks a bit disrespectful if you don't really understand what's going on. But that is why they started a bit of that. It's like, how can you have both positions? Either it's a useful thing to talk to Trump, or it is not. If it's not a useful thing to be able to have close conversations with Donald Trump, then that is a reason not to have invited him for the state visit, potentially. But if it is and in which case, why is Ed Davey urging Starmer to talk about it? Is that just performative politics? Why is he doing that? And if Ed Davey thinks that Keir Starmer might be able to make some progress, you know, persuade Trump to put that pressure on Netanyahu, although he singles out Netanyahu, I think the idea, I mean, we know where his motivation is, but even like the rest of his coalition government wouldn't want him to back out anyway. But the Israeli government, should we say? So does he think Starmer can somehow persuade Donald Trump to put more pressure on the Israeli government and the Qatari government, as Ed Davis said there? And if so, doesn't he think he has the same powers of persuasion? Wouldn't it be better if you had Ed Davey and Keir Starmer talking to Trump about this together, tag team? Wouldn't that be better? Why would that be? So I think there's a good point made here. I understand where the Lib Dems are from. They're from this position where they're a prominent party. They're the third largest party in Parliament. That gives them a certain amount of power in Parliament to at least post debates. And they can't form a government at the next time. So that gives them a certain amount of leeway. It means they can say things which don't cause anxiety on the part of the American government, for example, or Trump, because they're no threat. So the Lib Dems, they're in that position of influence. They've got a platform, but they're not a threat. So can they not use that? Is it really sensible to say, I'm not going to go to this thing, but at the same time recognise that talking to Trump can yield results? The two things don't marry up. And I do think the Lib Dems ought to probably decide which one they have and be a bit more consistent on it. Do they want to be themselves a party of protest, which you can absolutely do in their position, because they can't form a government. They might be able to act as a coalition partner, but they're a bit wary about that from the last time where Ed Davey was a minister. So you can have that position that you're going to be a party of protest, absolutely. Or you can say, what little influence we do have, we can use. They probably should decide which one it is. But they're not my thoughts anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'll see you later.